Hello, guys. How are you? Right, today we are going to look at Unit 1, which is the first one, the nature and scope of operations management function, the nature and scope of the operations management function. So it's basically an introduction to operations management. Right, let's get started. We are seeing that the successful management of operations is important in order for an organization to have efficient operational processes. The decisions operations managers undertake have an important role in achieving efficient operational processes. The scope of operations management explains what aspects are essential in operations management. Therefore, it is important that an operations manager, or you as an operations manager, understand the relationship that exists between different functions within an organization. We know that organizations have got different functions. So as an operations manager, you should understand the relationships that exist between those different functions. And also, it is important for you as an operations manager to be able to differentiate between goods and services. You know, we have goods and services. We should know the differences between goods and services. We'll look at these later on. Right, let's start by identifying operations management. Let's start by defining, operations management. So operations management basically is defined as the management process exploited to conceive, deliver, create, and distribute goods and services to customers that are value adding. Operations management, therefore, it is the management of the activities that relate to the creation of goods and services through the transformation of inputs to outputs. To look at the transformation process later on. And then under operations management, or under the transformation process, we have value added, and value added can be defined as the additional value of goods over the cost used to produce it. If any operation contributes more to the cost factor than the profit function, the operation is non-value adding. So for example, value is added throughout the manufacturing operations. So when goods are being manufactured, as they move along the manufacturing process, value is added at each stage until we have the output. Operations management includes processes and areas such as productivity, you have efficiency, satisfying the needs of customers, e-business, global competition, and customer service. These all are processes that we can find in operations management. We all know that businesses cannot function without operational activities. Businesses need operational activities. It might be manufacturing business, it might be a service business. It needs operational activities to function. So it is important to know what operations management is about. Right, the growth of operations management in manufacturing industry. The field of operations management has been expanding since the 1990s. We have seen an expansion in the field of operations management. So what we had under operations management in 1990, 1994 is now different to what we have now. We have seen an expansion of the field of operations management. A manager in a manufacturing business is no longer responsible for only pure manufacturing. We know that a manager in the manufacturing business in the 90s was responsible for manufacturing only, but now manager has got a lot of responsibilities and duties which are not related to manufacturing only. Some of the daily tasks for operations managers include responsibility for the supply chain management, inventory management, and basic maintenance. During the 1950s, the manufacturing boom started to satisfy the customers' needs for better and cheaper products. Factories were erected to provide the ever-increasing demand for more and better products, and as a result, productivity improved. As a result of the increased productivity, more and more people were required in the operations industry to produce the manufactured goods because there was increased productivity. So because of that, there was a lot of people who were required to work in the operations industry because productivity had increased. So labor was supposed to increase also so that we have a lot of people working, manufacturing goods, and also providing what? Services. So as the manufacturing sector was expanding, the need for service providers to look after the products so increased. He said the manufacturing sector increased. So as it was increasing, there was also need for service providers to look after the products, because there were now a lot of products. For those products, they were supposed to be looked after. So there was need now for service providers to look after those products. So there was an increase in the manufacturing sector. So also it led to the increase in the service industry, because a lot of people or service providers were needed. And the growth of operations management in the service industry, the principles used in manufacturing can also be used in the service industry, right? There's a difference between the manufacturing industry and the service industry. Manufacturing industries, they produce tangible goods. And then service industries, they provide or produce services. So we are saying the principles that are used in the manufacturing industry can also be used in the service industry. So service industry, we are talking of people who provide medical services, like a hospital. We have a doctor's practice. We have also restaurants. They are all these in the service industry. We can also talk of educational institutions. They are in the service sector. So we are saying what the principles that are used by businesses in the manufacturing sector, they can also be used in the service industry. Tasks such as scheduling, inventory management, and many others are performed in the service sector. There is scheduling of operations, there is inventory management, and other tasks in the service sector. These we can also find them. We also find them in the manufacturing sector. Professionals like electricians, we have technicians, we have dentists, and others provide services to people and businesses. We have a lot of other people who are not listed here who provide services to people and businesses. So in the last 2 decades, we have seen employment in the service sector has become far higher than in the manufacturing sector, meaning the service sector has been employing more people than the manufacturing sector. So the two sectors, manufacturing and service, must have a correlative existence, meaning they should coexist as each is dependent on the other, right? The manufacturing sector depends on the service sector. The service sector depends on the manufacturing sector. For example, we can talk of the educational service sector. Right now, I'm providing a tutoring service to you. It's a service that I'm providing, but you're sitting in front of your computer. The computer that you are facing right now, it's a product of the manufacturing sector. So without the manufacturing sector, we won't be able to provide the tutoring service to you. We won't be having the laptops. And then the manufacturing sector, maybe it has got machines that it uses. And then when those machines are not functioning, they need to be repaired. And then repair is a service. So these two sectors, the manufacturing sector and the service sector, they depend on each other. So they should coexist, because one sector cannot function without the other. It needs input of the other. Okay. Right, we have decisions made by operations managers at different levels in an organization. The following two interrelated sets of activities are necessary to manage the operations function successfully. The day-to-day management processes, these are the processes that make things happen, right? So we are saying it is necessary to manage the operations function, these two sets of activities. The first one, the day-to-day management of processes. We are talking of processes that make things happen. It might be in a manufacturing organization, it might be in a service organization. And then we also have another set, it's management of the strategic role, the management of the needs of the customers and what the markets require. So these are necessary to manage the operations function successfully. These two interrelated sets, that is the day-to-day management of processes and the management of the strategic role, require operations managers to make decisions. These decisions depend on the time frame and the type of decisions made. So in order to manage operations properly, an operations manager need to make decisions at 3 levels. There are 3 levels at which the operations manager should make decisions. The first one is the strategic level or the long-term level. And then we have tactical, which is medium term. And then we have the operational planning and control, which is short term. So we have short-term decisions, we have tactical decisions, and short-term decisions. Long-term, tactical, and short-term. So managers, operations managers should make decisions at these 3 levels. Okay. All right, let's start by looking at the strategic decisions. Strategic decisions can be defined as the decisions which are usually very broad. They concern operational strategies. They are made by senior management team, and they have long-term significance. That is from 2 to 20 years in the future for the organization. Those are strategic decisions. They concern operational strategies. They are very broad. They are made by senior management, and they have long-term significance. That is 2 to 20 years in the future. These are the issues that have an impact on what the company does in the long term. Strategic decisions are issues that have an impact on what the company does in the long term, because we see these are long-term decisions. For example, where to locate the facilities, how much capacity is needed to produce, and when more capacity should be added. So the following are examples of strategic or long-term decisions for organizations: deciding whether or not to launch a new product, deciding on a new process for a new product, and also deciding on a new layout for a plant. These are some of the examples of strategic decisions. Right, from strategic decisions, we have tactical decisions. Tactical decisions are medium term, less complex decisions made by middle managers. So strategic, they are made by top level managers, and then tactical decisions, they are made by middle managers. and they are medium-term decisions, and they are less complex compared to strategic decisions. The time period for tactical decisions can be any period from a couple of weeks to 2 years. It can be any period from a couple of weeks to 2 years, because there we say strategic decisions, they start from 2 maybe to 20 years. So tactical from a couple of weeks to 2 years. They follow on from strategic decisions and aim to meet the objectives stated in any strategic decision. Tactical decisions will influence areas such as the efficient scheduling of jobs, materials, and labor. The following are examples of tactical decisions: identifying the customer, and then identifying target demands. These are some examples of tactical decisions. So on this level, the medium-term level of tactical decisions, the operations manager must face issues such as the size of the workforce, when workers will be needed, the period for which workers will be needed, and whether overtime should be worked or an additional shift introduced. These are the issues that the operations manager should face on the medium-term level when making tactical decisions. Okay. Right, so the last set of decisions is the operational planning and control decisions. The operational planning and control decisions, which is short-term decisions. Operational decisions are defined as day-to-day decisions made by junior managers that are simple and routine. These ones, they are made now by junior managers, and they are simple. We said tactical, they are less complex. Then strategic, they are complex. Tactical, they are less complex. And then operational decisions, they are simple, and they are made by junior managers. Strategic, senior managers or top level managers, and then tactical, middle level managers. These ones, operational decisions, operational and control decisions, they are made by junior managers. So an operations manager must understand that successful operational planning and control decisions have to follow the constraints of the strategic and tactical areas. So these ones, they follow the decisions set at the strategic level and at the tactical level. There is a very short-term time period for making this type of decision, from a couple of hours to a day or a week. When it's operational decisions, it's from a couple of hours to a day or a week. And then from a couple of weeks to 2 years, that is where we find the tactical decisions. So examples of decisions regarding the planning and production of goods and services to meet the demand are deciding how much inventory to carry, deciding the quantity of raw materials to purchase. You cannot decide the quantity of raw materials to purchase. You don't need a year to decide this. Just a short period of time to decide. It might be hours or less than hours. Deciding how much overtime to work, deciding when the next maintenance program will be run. So these are some of examples of what tactical decisions. We also have control decisions. These can be defined as those decisions that are concerned with problem areas where standards have to be set, activities and output monitored, and corrective action taken. So it's operational planning and control decisions. So it's two. So we've looked at operational decisions, and now these are the control decisions. Those activities that are concerned with the problem areas where standards have to be set, activities and output monitored, and corrective action taken. So examples of control decisions include, we have deciding on the productivity of the factory, and then deciding on budget control. These are some of the examples of control decisions. Okay. So these are the three levels of decision-making for operations managers. Right, why do we start operations management? Why do we start operations management? We start the first one, the reason why we start operations management. We start operations management to determine how people organize themselves for a productive enterprise. An organization consists of three major functions, not three functions, but three major functions. That is market, it's about selling, and then finance, these are the accounts, and to producing, that is the operations. Therefore, operations management is one of the three major functions of an organization. So we should start operations management because it is a major function of an organization. So we need to start and understand operations management. The second reason why we start operations management, we start operations management because we want to know how goods and services are produced. Production is the creation of goods and services. Operations management ensures the efficient creation of goods and services through the transformation process. So for us to be able to understand the transformation process, we have to start operations management. Number three, the reason why we start operations management, we start operations management to understand what operations managers do. We have been referring to operations managers from the previous pages there. So we need to understand what they do. Maybe you might be employed as an operations manager. If you understand what operations managers do, then you'll be able to do that when you are an operations manager. So operations managers, they plan, organize, staff, lead, and control in order to ensure effective operational activities. So you know that now when you are employed as an operations manager, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to plan, to organize, to staff, to lead, and to control so that operations will be effective. Number four, we start operations management because it is such a costly part of an organization. A large percentage of the revenue of most firms is spent on the operations management function. If an organization effectively manages its operations management activities, its profitability will improve and its service to society will be enhanced. So it is the costly part of an organization. So we need to start operations management so that we'll be able to know how to reduce costs. How to reduce costs that are found in the what? In operations management. There, when costs are reduced, then an organization can increase its profits. Because most organizations are set up to make profit. Then the fifth reason why we start operations management, we start operations management to ensure competitiveness in the organization. Studying operations management will enable an organization to compete on an equal footing with other organizations in the 21st century. So we need, that's another reason why we start operations management to ensure competitiveness in the organization. And the organization will be able to compete with other organizations, to know what other organizations are doing in their operations management functions. Then it can be able to compete. So these are some of the reasons why we start operations management. Right, the scope of operations management. So the scope of operations management includes, these are the three things that are included in the scope of operations management: making decisions that affect the production of goods and services, ensuring the relationship between the different functions in the organization, and guaranteeing the entire organization works together as a system. Let's look at the first one, decisions, making of decisions. So the methodology utilized to make a decision would depend entirely on the scale of the decision to be made. Risk factors too must be taken into account when decisions are made. When operations managers are making decisions, they should also take risk factors into account because risks are encountered along the way. So there are steps that are followed to guarantee that a good decision is made. To ensure that a good decision is made, there are steps that need to be followed. Step number one is the reason for taking the decision. The reason for taking the decision. Under the first step, the conditions may have changed from the time the decision was made. Therefore, there will be need for taking new decisions. So taking a new decision might include opening a new market. And then step number two, definition of existing circumstances and impending circumstances, impending or forthcoming circumstances. These circumstances should be evaluated in detail. These two circumstances, existing circumstances and forthcoming circumstances, they need to be evaluated in detail. So under this step, information on price, cost, labor needs, market segment, capital needs should be researched. And then step number three, setting of objectives. The measures used to define the success of the process must be described plainly. That is under setting the objectives. The measures that are used to define the success of the process, they need to be described. So this may include factors such as profit expectation, what the organization is expecting as far as profit is concerned, and then cost performance and the required, maybe the required return on investment. Okay. Step number four, identification of the alternatives. Identification of the alternatives. So it is not a good idea for organizations to just rely on one plan of action. Organizations or business organizations should not rely on one plan of action. There needs to be other options or other alternatives in case the original plan fails or is unsuccessful. Right, step number five, selection of the best plan available. That's step number five. The plan selected will be the plan seen as having the best possibility of being successful. And then step number six, fine-tuning of the plan for the implementation. Fine-tuning of the plan for the implementation. Under fine-tuning of this plan, risks should be identified. We say there are risks that are encountered along the way, so risks need to be identified, and then any uncertainties should be eliminated from the selected plan. So it is important that operations managers ensure that all set objectives or all goals that have been set are met. That is under step number six. And then the last step, that For the last step is step number 7, examination of the outcome of the plan that has been implemented. So it is important that operations managers examine the outcomes. These are the results. So this examination of the outcome is the only way success of the new endeavor can be determined. You can be able to determine whether the new endeavor that has been taken has been successful or not. If results are negative, it means the endeavor should be stopped. But if results are positive, then the endeavor should continue. So these are the 7 steps that should be followed to guarantee that a good decision is made. Step number 1 up to now, step number 7. All right, the second one there is function. We said the first year we're looking at the decisions. Second one is functions, and then we have a system, the scope of operations management. Okay, so the 3 major functional areas of an organization are operations, finance, and marketing. We say this. In a manufacturing industry, operations produce the goods. In a service organization, this department may be referred to as the operations department. So in the general setup of an organization, operations refer to that part of the organization that produces goods or services. And then the last area here under the scope of operations management, we have the system. The organization as a whole can be seen as a system. The main purpose of the system is to generate profits. Business organizations, they are said to generate what? Profit. That's their main purpose. So as a system, the purpose is to generate profit. To achieve the goal, the main system can be divided into subsystems. To achieve the goal of generating profit, we're saying the organization as a system can be divided into subsystems. The most important subsystems, the major ones, are operations, finance, and marketing. We have other systems, but these are the major ones. We can talk of IT department, we can talk of the human resources department. We have a lot of subsystems in an organization, but the major ones, operations, finance, and marketing. And then a decision that is made in any of the 3 subsystems will influence what happened, not only in the other subsystems, but also on the entire system. So decisions that are made in these 3 subsystems, the major ones, operations, finance, and marketing, is going to influence what will happen in other subsystems, and also in the entire organization as a system. Okay. Right, the relationship between the different functions within an organization, the relationship between the different functions within an organization. The objective of most organizations is to produce a good or service for profit. Say there are some organizations that are non-profit organizations, but most organizations, their objective is to produce a good or a service for profit. They need to make profit. After which, if they're not making that profit, then they close down. So the 3 major functional areas in an organization, we have finance, operations, and marketing, and their supporting functions. They perform different activities, but are interrelated. They're saying finance, operations, and marketing, they perform different functions, but they are interrelated. Right, let's look at the finance function, or we can call it the accounting function. This function makes the money available to buy raw materials and new machines, pay salaries, and meet other costs. Okay, we said operations management, operations function, it has got the raw materials that it uses. So the money that is used to buy those raw materials comes from the what? From the finance function. So the operations management function, it also relies on the finance function. So it is important for the operations and finance function to continuously consult each other. It is very important because the operations needs what? The finance function or the finance department for the money to buy raw materials, inputs. Then number two, we have the marketing department. The marketing department is responsible for communicating the organization's products and services to its markets in order to generate customer request for service. Right? Organization produces goods and services. Then the marketing department is the one that communicates these products and services to customers in the markets. So after the operations management has produced goods and services, then the marketing department communicates these products and services to the market or to the customers. And then the operations department, these are the three major departments. It is responsible for fulfilling customer requests for service through the production and the delivery of products and services. Right, so these are the three major functions in the organization. In addition, there are support functions which enable the core functions to operate effectively. These include the human resource functions, the technical functions, and information systems functions, etc. These functions, they help the major three functions to operate. Right, here we have a relationship in a manufacturing organization. We have ABC Private Limited. We have the finance department. We're just looking at the three major. We have the finance department. We are talking of the accounts payable, accounts receivables, and then we have investments and loans. Accounts payable, suppliers, accounts receivables. This is what the debtors are owing. And then we have the operations department. We have production, logistics, procurement, product design. And then we have the marketing department. We're talking of sales promotion, market research, advertising, customer satisfaction. This is what falls under each department, each of the three major departments. Okay. Right, the transformation process. Let's look at the transformation process in an organization. The transformation process explains the activities that occur in the operations of an organization. The transformation process is tasked with producing the goods or services of an organization. The transformation process can be defined as a process that takes a set of inputs and transforms them in some way to create outputs, which could either be a good or a service. Transformation process, it takes in inputs, and then in those inputs are processed, and then we get outputs. These outputs can be a product or a service. So the inputs that are used by the transformation process are known as the 8 M's and are used to produce the finished goods or render the service of an organization. We'll look at these 8 M's later on in the next page. So the inputs go through the transformation process to reach the state of outputs. We have inputs, then they go through the transformation process where they are processed, and then we get outputs. That's the transformation process. A distinction has to be made between two different types of inputs. We have transformed inputs. The inputs, e.g., material, people, and data that are changed during the operations. The transformed inputs, they are changed during the operations. And then we also have transforming inputs, which are the resources, e.g. machinery, equipment. These are needed by the operation to do the changing of inputs into outputs. Transformed inputs, they are changed during the operations process. And then the transforming inputs, they are used, right? They are used to do the changing of inputs into outputs. They are not changed. Raw materials, they are changed. So they are transformed inputs. And then when you talk of machinery, it is used to change the raw materials into outputs. So it's a transforming input. So you need to know the difference between transformed inputs and transforming inputs. Right, we talked of the 8 M's in the transformation process. So these are the inputs, the 8 M's. We have money, we have manpower, we have the materials, we have methods, management, machines, messages, and markets. These are the 8 M's that we talked about on the previous page. We say these are the inputs. And then from the inputs, we have the transformation process, which includes systems and processes. From there, we have outputs, which are finished goods and services. And then during the transformation process, we have value that is added. Value is added during the transformation process before we get the outputs. And then from the outputs there, we have feedback. The feedback is given to the transformation process, and the feedback also goes to the input stage. So this is our transformation process. Inputs, transformation process, and outputs. And then we have value added and feedback. Okay. Right, let's have a brief look at the 8 M's, just a brief look at the 8 M's of operations management. Inputs are defined as what is put in, taken in, operated on by any process or system. The 8 M's of the inputs are utilized in the transformation process. We have the first one, we say it is money. This is the finance available to produce the respective goods and services. An operations manager facilitates this process by means of budgets. Okay, so that's the first M, money, the finance. It comes from the finance department. We have manpower, human resources. It involves the selection, mentoring, training, and rewarding of the workforce. The operations manager is also involved in job structuring and performance management, and is responsible for counseling and disciplining the workforce when the need arises. That's the manpower, which are human resources, or the employees or the workers. And then the third one, we have materials. An operations manager, in conjunction with the purchasing department, is responsible for the obtaining, storage, and quality of all materials that are required in the manufacture of goods or rendering a service during the conversion process and the safekeeping of finished goods. And then the other one, the other M, we have methods. An operations manager needs to choose and design effective systems, subsystems, and processes that will guarantee optimization in the use of resources and facilitate the manufacture of a good or the provision of services. So if the operations manager does not choose effective systems and processes, then there will be maybe wastage of resources. Those systems might not be efficient. So it needs to choose effective systems and processes. And then the other M is management. An operations manager is involved in setting up organizational structures that will assist management in its roles of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. We know that these are the, we have the 4 roles of managers or functions of managers: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So an operations manager is involved in setting up these structures of the organization that will assist in these roles. And then machines, that's the other M. The operations manager is to ensure that the machinery utilized for the production of goods and services is reliable and well maintained. You need to use reliable machines, and then make sure that the machines are well maintained. If they are malfunctioning, they need to be repaired. So this can be achieved through the implementation of the correct maintenance programs. And then the other M, which is M number 7, messages are the communication between departments, management, and employees. Messages can be the material requirements plan, which is MRP, the master production schedule, or the budget available for the production of goods or rendering of a service. And then the last M of inputs, we have markets. An operations manager is to be aware of the markets and market segments in which the organization expects to operate. The information gathered from the marketplace by the marketing department will determine the demand for the organization's goods and or services. So it is important to know the market segments and the markets in which the organization expects to operate, because that is where the goods or services will be bought. If the organization doesn't know its customers or the market segments in which to serve, then it won't be able to sell its products or services. Okay, so these are the 8 M's that we have under inputs. Right, we have the systems and processes from the transformation process. This is the part of the transformation process that ensures value is added, the inputs, to guarantee that the outputs will have a higher value. Systems and processes, they ensure that value is added to the inputs so that we have output with a higher value. If value is not added, then outputs that will come will be of what? For value. So that is enabled by systems and processes, the addition of value. And then on the transformation process, we have feedback to ensure that the proper transformation process is followed. Regular measurements must be taken. This is the feedback process that will inform an organization about whether the processes are performing as they should. So feedback is very, very, very important. It informs the organization whether processes are performing as they should. And then if they are not performing as they should, corrective action should be taken. And then the other element that we have is value added. So if we look at that other diagram that I showed you here, we have value added at the top there. We have value added at the top. So value added, it represents the block at the top of that figure that I've shown you. It represents the value added to a product or service. At each stage, the inputs are transformed from a previous state to the next by the work carried out in the manufacturing process. That is called adding value. So at each stage, value is added. So we are saying at each stage, inputs, they gain value as compared to the previous stage. They gain value until we have a tangible output. At each stage, value added. And then from the last element that we have on the transformation process, we have outputs. And output is defined as the amount of something produced by a person, machine, or industry. The value of the output should be greater than the value of the input. Right? The input that have been fed into the process should not be greater than the output. So the output should have greater value than the input. Because if it doesn't have greater value than the input, then it means we have wasted. We won't be able to sell and make a profit. So for us to be able to sell, or for the organization to be able to sell and make a profit, the output should have a greater value than what was input into the processes or into the system. Okay. Right, so the last section that we are looking at, we are going to look at the difference between goods and services. Differences between goods and services and goods production. Operations management is concerned with both the manufacturing and service industry. We have said this. Manufacturers utilize operations management to produce a tangible good, while service providers utilize operations management to produce a service. A good, or you can call it a product, can be defined as a thing that is the result of an action or process. We get a product from an action or a process. The transformation process gives us goods or products. And then a service can be defined as the economic activity that produces an intangible product, such as education, entertainment, lodging, and government services. So a good is tangible. We can talk of a good as television. We have a laptop that you are using right now. Anything that is tangible that you can buy, that has been manufactured by manufacturing organizations, those are goods or products. And then a service, an economic activity that produces an intangible product. You cannot touch a service. Just know that there is a service. We have education, it's a service. You won't be able to touch or see education. We have entertainment, we have lodging, we have government services, we have health services. All these are services. They are not tangible. You cannot touch them. But just know that there's education, there's entertainment. There is also a distinction to be drawn between production and manufacturing. Manufacturing, on the one hand, is the conversion of a design into a finished product. Manufacturing, we are saying it is the conversion of a design into a finished product. And then production, it is the physical act of making the product. Production is the physical act of making the product. So in the broader sense, manufacturing consists of a number of production activities. So we can say production is under manufacturing. Production is under manufacturing. Right, you might be asked of the differences between goods and services. You might be asked of the differences between goods and services. Right, goods and services, differences in a tabular format. Number one, goods are tangible, services are intangible. Number two, goods are produced by manufacturers, services are produced by service organizations. Goods, they are easy to store. You can store goods, but services, impossible to store services. You cannot store a service. Number four, goods can be transported, but services, they cannot be transported. Number five, there's delay between production and consumption of goods, right? Goods, they can be produced now, and then they'll be consumed later. There's a delay between production and consumption of goods. But production and consumption at the same time under services. There's production and consumption at the same time. Right now, I'm providing a service to you. That's production, and you're consuming on the other end. So it's production and consumption at the same time when it's service. Number six, goods, they maintain a value much longer. Goods can maintain value for a long period of time, but services, they lose value quickly. Number 7, difference, we have goods are less likely to be unique, and then services, they are likely to be unique. Number 8, there is little or no contact between manufacturer and customer with goods. Manufacturer produces the goods, and then there will be a channel that is going to be followed before the customer gets the good. There will be middlemen in between the manufacturer and the customer. So there's little or no contact between the manufacturer and the customer. And then interaction between customer and service, interaction between customer and provider is high when it's under services. The one who is providing the service and the customer, there will be interaction. As I'm providing a service to you, we might be answering questions, I might be responding to your questions, I might be asking you questions, might be giving me answers, discussing, doing all those things. So we are interacting. The provider and the customer, they interact when they are services. Number 9, little or no participation of the customer under goods, participation of customers in the service. Number 10, centralized away from the customer, those are goods. And then services, the facility of the service is near the customer. Goods, they are mostly automated when they are being manufactured. And then services, very labor intensive, right, when being produced. Number 12, easy to measure quality of goods. It's very, very easy to measure the quality, and it's difficult to measure the quality of services. We are not saying it cannot be measured, but it's difficult to measure the quality of services. It can be measured maybe using surveys where customers provide feedback, but it's very difficult to measure quality under services. Number 13, goods, they do not depend on one person, and then services, server determines the standard of quality. The one who is providing the service is the one who determines the standard of quality. But for goods, they do not depend on one person. Service can depend on one person. Number 14, the last difference here, it's easier to measure output of goods and cannot measure the output accurately of services. So these are some of the differences between goods and services. You might be asked to tabulate the differences between goods and services. So you need to know these differences. Okay, restaurants, they provide services and goods also. What you buy and go and eat, it's a good. And then the services that they provide there, when you go, you're provided with services. So you can say restaurants, they provide both a service and a tangible product. Okay, thank you for that. Right, so this is the end of our lecture. So to summarize, we can say that the essence of operations management can be stated as follows. The operations function of an organization is responsible for producing and delivering goods or services of value to customers of the organization. Operations managers make decisions to manage the transformation process that converts input into desired finished goods or services. Right, so this is the end of our first lecture. So next time we'll look at unit number 2. Along the way, we are also going to cover a lot of questions that you might meet when you write your exams. And we are also going to cover how you write your assignments, right? Structuring of assignment, everything, we are going to cover all those things. So please make sure that you are there when you are doing the lectures, or when you miss the lecture, the recording will be there, and then you follow the recording. I need you to pass your assignment, to pass your exam. So we'll cover a lot of questions, and we will also look at the assignments. Okay, thank you very much. Any question before we leave the meeting? Any question? Any question from you guys? Okay, silence means that there's no question. Thank you very much. Let's meet next week. Let's meet next week. Have a good night. Goodbye.